Jó napot kívánunk! Ez itt a PesText irodalmi fesztivál nemzetközi virtuális adása. Üdvözlöm a kedves nézőket innen a stúdióból. Vendégünk a mai beszélgetésünkön Szentiványi Nora Szentiványi, aki norvég, magyar származású íróként a PesText vendége. És vele egy rövidebb beszélgetést fogunk folytatni angol nyelven. Okay, welcome Nora to this virtual studio interview. And on behalf of PesText and all our viewers in Hungary, welcome. We are here to discuss your book, which has also been published in Hungarian. The title is Lakás, and it's been generally a well-received book, and I understand your first novel. So my first question is, what language did you write this in? And more exactly, how many versions? Why Norwegian? How did you end up a Norwegian writer?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Sweden. I was born in Hungary, and my parents left Hungary when I was just a baby, 1 year old. So I grew up in Sweden, and my language is actually Swedish, I would say, my writing language. So when I write my small things, I write in Swedish. But I live since 20 years in Norway now. Came here because I got a job. So, and now I have family here, and I will stay. And I met this publisher in Oslo who wanted to see more of my writing, and in the beginning we had the Swedish text, and then at a certain point I had to I wouldn't say translate, I would say rewrite it, because you rewrite, of course. And I was perhaps halfway through the manuscript when I started to rewrite it in Norwegian.
So there are several versions of the manuscript in
Yes.
several languages, and your first publication is, in a certain sense, already a translation.
Yeah, in a way. All right, but the thing is, I wrote it myself. So, but of course I need some more help with washing the manuscript in Norwegian. I have a friend who is she's also a translator actually, and she's a very good reader. So she was writing. I had even skulls in the text because I make many mistakes in Norwegian. But yeah, I'm proud of myself. I made it in Norwegian. And then and then there was this Hungarian publisher, Scolar, who was interested. So the process, I think, started before. Yeah, the process of translating it to Hungarian.
Yeah, I was going to just ask you about that.
Yeah.
There are, in fact, 2 Hungarian translators. How did you manage communicating with your translators in the process?
Yeah, the thing is, I was first invited by the Norwegian embassy in Budapest to this festival. What's it called? It's in the spring. Literature festival.
Or the book festival.
Yeah, the book festival. I was there, and I met this lady at the embassy she's working with the culture, Norwegian culture in Budapest, and she had read the book, so she was and she wanted to translate it. So she's one of the translators.
Yes.
And she knew the other translator very well, so they have been working together. And my Hungarian, I can't really read Hungarian, so I can understand a little bit. I could speak with my grandmother, and I could, but my Hungarian is very a child's language.
Yes,
So,
I remember you writing the same in your book, that you don't want to be the narrator says that you don't want to be recognized as a Hungarian because of the awkwardness of the language. So how does it feel now to read your own work in Hungarian? What's that experience like?
Yeah, this is hard. I don't really like Hungarian. To me, it's very. Perhaps it comes too close, or I don't know. And of course, I don't understand really, or I can't really read. So I read like a child, like a child just starting. So it's I haven't really looked much into it, but also I have this feeling with all my texts. When I've written something, I can't go back and see it. So I don't really know. It's like it's living its own life.
Yes, indeed. And it's becoming part of a story. And this is one of the themes of the book, how different people in different generations in a family separated by politics, by geography, by language, still manage to become very important, very integral part of each other's stories. What do you think about that? About the actual autobiographical story becoming part of fiction? To what extent is this fiction, and to what extent is it straight autobiography? Because as far as I could see, the book is perhaps not as much a novel as a sort of more like a collage of scenes, almost movie-like. And I found that really fascinating, and it is a highly enjoyable read. And all the while I was thinking, this is possibly one of the central connecting elements, this becoming part of a story, of a narrative, and that is, I imagine, quite a central thing to be doing when you're writing your own autobiographical book.
Yeah, I think you're really. I like that. To work with this collage technique, and also I feel that it's not. It's not about me, but it's of course my experiences. And as for the autobiography part, I think you could say that for me it's important to not to. Well, the hard point is when you start to. I have to guess so much. I have to. That's interesting for me. When I started to write, I was thinking that I was going to write about my grandmother, and you realize how much you don't know when you sit down and start to write about somebody. You realize how little you really know. You have this story in your head a little bit, but yeah. So I had to guess. So I think the most common word in the book is perhaps, or I think, and so I had to guess a lot. And I'm guessing, and for me it's important to also to show where I am guessing and where I am telling something I know.
So there's a lot of investigative work. It's almost like an investigative journalism project. Do you actually have a timeline of this story set up with a linear timeline of the family story and everything, or is it all family pictures and these little isolated bits that you connect in the book? What does it look like?
What does it look like in my head?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't. For me, it was more. I didn't plan the book like a book. It was more. It was written as it is as you read it in the collage technique. So the first text, it was important for me to have it first in the book because that's what I wrote first. And
yes.
Yeah, and then you arrange, of course, a little bit. But it's. And for me, it was also important to know. It was a kind of writing process that was just to touch those things that is moving around right now. So I wasn't really when I sat down every day. When I sat down, I didn't know what to write about. I didn't know today I'm going to write about.
This whole thing is an organic process, and you're kind of making it up as you go along.
Yeah, and that's important for me. Yeah.
Was it a challenge to have so many different characters from different generations as each other's grandmothers, mothers, daughters? Did you have a hard time, finding the focus for those narratives?
No, I think more like the opposite. I was fascinated by the, I think it's fascinating to think of time in layers behind each other. Whose childhood is it? Is it really? Is it me? Is it my grandmother? Is it my mother? Is it my own child? So, but I think perhaps a reader might have. I have had some complaints about that. That it might be hard to follow, but for me, it's part of the point. That is for me a way to see time.
I see.
Yeah, hard to explain.
So it's a non-linear approach to time with many different focuses, all relevant to a story.
Yeah.
Okay, and also there's a lot of childhood scenes in the story, not only in the sense of actual, biological childhood, but also these attitudes of vulnerability. And this is a very interesting issue that your novel or your book deals with, how grown-ups are also as vulnerable in some senses as children. And and this ties in with the story taking place in Hungary under state socialism. One of the recurrent themes, or a sort of a motto, it almost appears in your book, is that you just can't live under a dictatorship. Now, this is a strange juxtaposition to the story, which is, for one part, exactly what we're claiming can't be done. People are actually living in that dictatorship. So what is that message? Is that an ironic message? Is it a message to the present? Is it a message about the past? What can you tell us about that?
Well, it is my existence. It is the most fundamental existential part of my story in my life, my own life, because we were refugees from a dictatorship.
That's right.
So, always when I have a strange name here in Scandinavia, and so I have this question always coming: where do you come from? And then when I present myself, I was born in Hungary, and my parents left because it was a dictatorship.
How do non-Hungarian speakers pronounce your name?
No, they start with Nora, and then they say, "Okay, Nora."
Well, okay, Nora. Let's go back to this place where your family arrives to Sweden. Finally arrives to Sweden as political refugees from state socialist Hungary. What are your memories from that part of your life?
Yeah, well, we were moving around a lot, and first went to, but that's not my own memories. To a place where you wait, and my father always says that's the worst. That was the worst part.
Sort of a transit zone where you had
to
just
wait
and see what happens. You have a lot of reflection on the frustrations of bureaucracy. So apparently that is also a prevalent frustration in that part of life in the West.
It is. It is, and that's a question which is for me kind of very close to my heart. I really feel for people who are refugees today, and today when they come to Scandinavia, they're not waiting 3 months. They might wait 3 years. So for their answer of if they're going to stay or not. So that's and I think the question of the refugees in the world is very acute today, and it's close to my heart, and that's actually what I'm trying to write my next book a little bit about the questions. I'm kind of into that, yeah.
Right, and could you tell us a little about your next project? That's really intriguing. I suppose it's work in progress, and I don't want to push too hard, but maybe you could just tell me how you are going to perhaps depart from your personal story to a different narrative, to a different register of fiction.
Yeah, the first thing I had to do was to change sex. I had to be a man. I'm writing, so I'm writing from a man's perspective now, and he's more. It's hard to say more actually, but he's like, I think he has a kind of same family history like me. He has been his family came to Scandinavia when he was a child, and he's also trying to help. He's trying to help refugees, and but it's complicated, of course, because you get so involved. So he's a bit too much involved, and that's his problem. So that's what it's going to be about, and more. I don't know much more about than that.
You'll have to make it up as you go along.
I have to, yeah. I'm not. I can't plan the whole thing. Then it's just eroding.
I would like to take us back again to your debut novel, which we are discussing, and I don't know if our audience has all read the book, but I suppose many of us haven't. So I would just like to point out that it takes place as a story set in the 70s, the late 70s, which is when a small Hungarian family, a couple and a child, make a leap for freedom and decide to leave the country and leave the grandmother behind. Now, I also noticed that from the beginning of the book, you have a great eye for detail, for objects and the relation of objects to people. Perhaps it helps ground the reader in that environment. Are these all from memory, or how did you work with the whole setting?
It's mostly memory, but the thing is, my story is that my grandmother, as you said, my parents, they left Budapest when I was a very small child, and my grandmother, they were living together with her. That's why it's the flat. They were living together in the same flat. It's in a very, very small flat in Budapest, and they left without telling her anything. So in the morning she went to work, and they were supposed to go to work, or my father, and they just say goodbye as people do in the morning, and then when she came home, they had left, and she didn't know anything about. She didn't know their plans, and she didn't know where they went or anything, and so that's that shock, I think, is my is a story of my life. my grandmother's shock of being left alone, but also but then we were, of course, after some years we could visit her. First just me, and I have a little sister. We could go there to alone. So my parents put me on a plane and sent me to Budapest, and So I have my memories, a lot of memories from that flat and from my grandmother. And she was, and we were visiting her, not every year, but yeah, trying to visit. And she was also coming. So I have my memories, but also while I was still writing the book, she was still alive. So she's dead now. She actually died in the spring when I was finishing my book. So I had also the opportunity to be there while I was writing. Yeah.
I see. And this book is, in fact, the processing of your personal heritage, or would you say that the story itself ends up being the heritage? How is it in hindsight?
Yeah, I would say that it's the processing. Well, what was your question?
So how does it travel well now that you've processed your heritage and it's actually translated into Hungarian for a Hungarian audience? What do you think this this heritage is for a Hungarian reader?
Well, that's amazing. That I don't know. That's an amazing thought. For me, I wasn't at all thinking that this would be translated to Hungarian. I wasn't thinking of an Hungarian audience at any point of, so it was first when my agent said that there is somebody is interested in Hungary. It was like, what? It was really, really a new thought for me. And so I want to ask you, I think it's really interesting to hear how you, because it's of course, it's a very Scandinavian perspective, I would say.
Yes, indeed it is.
Yeah. And it might be strange. I don't know.
One thing I was really gripped by personally when reading your book was this small part where you were writing about how crying was not something much directly expressed in that family circle, how people wouldn't actually make big displays of emotion. And well, that sounded to me like something uncomfortable, but also possibly something perhaps Scandinavian. Now, what do I know? But this whole story is, after all, an expression of not only the story itself and the plot of the story, but all the emotion that is that remained unexpressed or perhaps never communicated, and that was, I think, one of the most accessible entry points for me to this whole story. The fact that this is conveying a lot of emotion, a lot of family trauma, if we can call it that, that is expressed through literature. So that's one way to read the book, as a work of personal, autobiographic, well, in a way, a sort of a literary therapy. And I think it works really well that way, that you can access the story this way as a Hungarian reader, and you can relate to all that is being processed. But it's very strange to read these things from the vantage point of a perpetual outsider, or someone who perceives Hungary, the locations, the culture, even the stereotypes as sort of other. I mean, I was reading about this and I realized that the apartment is located in Ondorutca in the 11th district of Budapest, which is only a couple of blocks away from where I'm actually living. So so I was going past there this morning on my bicycle. And I mean, it's just something you ride by every day. You don't think of it as the scene of a life's history.
Yeah. You're a good reader. Well, yeah, it's a lot of therapy here, of course, and I think I don't think it's the Scandinavian way put feelings away that is reflected, but it's more of the big sorrow that you can't really let out because it's too big, actually, and to always, and for me, I've started actually from the feeling of whose sorrow is it? Is it mine? I don't think it's mine, because I have, but I feel it. It's my grandmother's sorrow, which is, it's left in me because she was left. And also, in a way, the sorrow of a country, I think. The sorrow of a country that had to be in this way. It was, so it's hard to explain. But anyway, I think sorrow.
Well, it's perhaps we can say it's not an especially happy story, but then again, it's not a stereotypically sort of full of grief kind of story either.
No.
And a lot of these sorrows, a lot of these frustrations, and a lot of the scenery and the objects, a lot of it is pretty trivial. It's not really a grand
No.
narrative. It is really everyday stuff in a very very interesting sensibility. And so I would also like to ask you, once you finished the book, did that change your relation to your own Hungarian roots, or to Hungary as your old country?
Hard to say. The big change for me, in a way, is that, well, I was there with my book, and I meet a lot of people who are very different from people I met as a child, who are actually cultural interested, and we can speak the same about the same things, and the same views. I really like my publishers, people in the festival. So that's the book is, in a way, taking me to new places in Hungary, and that's really nice, I think.
That's great. I think that's a really good place that literature can take you past the limits of your own story, of your own personal narrative, and into new areas, new dimensions, and new narrators. So I think we're going to round off our interview for today, and I would like to thank you for giving us your time and giving us your excellent book. And I hope that your new project will finish as well as this one, and I hope you'll have good luck making it up as you go along. So thank you very much, Nora. Ezzel most végeztünk is ezzel a beszélgetéssel. Nora Szentiványi volt a vendégünk itt a stúdióban, ezen a virtuális beszélgetésen a PesText Nemzetközi Irodalmi Fesztiválon. Én Dányi Dani voltam, és nagyon köszönöm a figyelmet, viszontlátásra!